The war had been going on for 3 long years. Earth was losing badly every day. More ships came back damaged or didn't come back at all. Captain David Rodriguez stood in the huge crystal hall of the space station, looking up at the alien king, who towered over him like a giant tree. King Aethelzil was nothing like humans had imagined aliens would look. He had four bright blue eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His skin looked like polished silver, and when he moved, it was like watching liquid metal flow. But what struck David the most was how calm the king seemed, even though his people had been fighting humans for years. Captain Rodriguez, the king's voice echoed through the hall like distant thunder. Your people are brave fighters, but this war benefits no one. Too many have lost their lives on both sides. David felt his heart racing. This was Earth's last chance. Their military leaders had sent him here because they were desperate. Earth's defenses were crumbling, and their resources were almost gone. If this meeting failed, humanity might not survive another year. The alien king walked slowly around the room, his footsteps making soft musical sounds on the crystal floor. Other alien officials stood along the walls, their expressions unreadable. David had studied their culture for months, but he still felt like he was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. I have a proposal, King Aethelzil said, stopping directly in front of David. A way to end this conflict forever and bring our peoples together in peace. David straightened up. We're listening, Your Majesty. A marriage alliance, the king announced, between myself and a woman from your galaxy. This union will seal our peace treaty and show both our peoples that we can coexist. The other humans in the room looked at each other nervously. David's assistant, Lieutenant Johnson, whispered something about political marriages being common in Earth's history too. But this felt different. This was about the survival of their entire species. You may choose any woman from anywhere in the known galaxy, the king continued. From the crystal cities of Venus to the floating gardens of Alpha Centauri, I place no restrictions on your choice, beauty, intelligence, royal blood, common birth. None of these matter to me. I trust your judgment. David felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Like a mountain, the king was offering them everything: peace, survival, and even the freedom to choose his bride from anywhere in the galaxy. It seemed too good to be true. Why marriage? David asked carefully. Why not just a peace treaty? King Aethelzil asked for eyes focused on him with what almost looked like a smile. Because treaties can be broken when convenient, but family bonds, true partnerships, these last forever. When our people see their leaders united, they will understand that our futures are connected. The alien king gestured to a massive window that showed the stars beyond. My people believe that strength comes not from power, but from the choices we make when no one is watching. Your people intrigue us, Captain Rodriguez. You fight not for conquest, but for survival. You protect the weak and help each other in times of trouble. These are qualities we respect. David realized this was more than just a political arrangement. Somehow, this alien king was genuinely interested in understanding humanity. But that made the choice even harder. How do you pick one person to represent your entire species? How long do we have to decide? David asked. Take all the time you need, the king replied. But remember, every day we delay, more lives are lost on both sides. I would prefer to celebrate a wedding rather than attend more funerals. That night, David couldn't sleep. He walked through the quiet corridors of the space station, thinking about the impossible task ahead of him. The galaxy was full of remarkable women. There were famous scientists who had discovered new worlds, artists whose work was celebrated across star systems, and leaders who had built peaceful civilizations from nothing. His communication device buzzed with messages from Earth. The media had somehow learned about the meeting, and everyone had opinions about who should be chosen. Some suggested the daughter of Earth's president. Others thought they should pick someone from the outer colonies to show unity. A few even suggested holding a contest to find the most suitable candidate, but something bothered David about all these suggestions. Everyone seemed focused on impressing the alien king, on showing off humanity's best and brightest. But what if that wasn't what the king really wanted? What if this was some kind of test? He remembered the king's words about strength coming from choices made when no one is watching. Maybe the king wasn't looking for someone perfect. Maybe he was looking for someone real. David spent the next few days studying everything he could about Zephyrian culture. He learned that they valued honor above beauty, sacrifice above comfort, and genuine kindness above clever words. Their greatest heroes weren't warriors or rulers, but ordinary people who had done extraordinary things for others. As he read more, a crazy idea began forming in his mind, an idea so unexpected that even he wasn't sure if it was brilliant or completely foolish. But the more he thought about it, the more certain he became that this was the right choice. The fate of humanity might depend on picking not the most obvious candidate, but the most surprising one. Captain David Rodriguez stood in front of the communication screen, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared to make the most important announcement in human history. Behind him, his entire diplomatic team waited in shocked silence. They had spent weeks compiling lists of the galaxy's most accomplished women, and now David was about to throw all their work away. "I have made my decision," David said into the screen that connected him to King Aethazel. "Her name is Rosa Martinez. She works as a maintenance engineer in Earth's Industrial District 7. The silence that followed was so complete that David could hear his own heartbeat. Lieutenant Johnson dropped his tablet. Dr. Chen, their cultural expert, stared at David like he had lost his mind. Even the alien king's four eyes seemed to widen in surprise. Rosa Martinez was nobody special, at least not in the way the world measured importance. She was 34 years old, with calloused hands from years of fixing broken machinery. Her face was marked with small scars from industrial accidents, and her hair was already showing streaks of gray from stress and hard work. She lived in a tiny apartment in the poorest part of Earth's main colony, working 3 different jobs just to pay for food and rent. But David knew something about Rosa that the rest of the world didn't know. 3 months ago, when the power grid in District 7 had failed during a storm, Rosa had worked for 18 straight hours in dangerous conditions to restore electricity to the medical center. She had saved dozens of lives that night, including several children in the intensive care unit. She never asked for recognition or reward. She just did what needed to be done. When her neighbor's husband died in the war, Rosa had quietly started paying for their groceries and helping with their children. Even though she barely had enough money for herself, she had donated her savings to help build shelters for war refugees, leaving herself with almost nothing. Rosa was also a single mother. Her husband had died 2 years ago when his transport ship was attacked by enemy forces. Since then, she had raised her 2 children alone while working multiple jobs. Her son Miguel was 8, and her daughter Ana was 6. Both children adored their mother and worked hard in school because they wanted to make her proud. The media response was immediate and brutal. News reporters called David's choice insulting to womankind and the worst diplomatic decision in history. Social media exploded with angry comments. People posted pictures of famous beauties and accomplished leaders, asking why David hadn't chosen one of them instead. Rosa herself learned about the decision when reporters showed up at her apartment building. She was coming home from her night shift at the water treatment plant, covered in dirt and exhausted, when cameras and microphones were shoved in her face. "Ms. Martinez, how does it feel to be chosen as the alien king's bride?" a reporter shouted. Rosa stared at them like they were speaking a foreign language. "What are you talking about? I think you have the wrong person." When they explained what had happened, Rosa laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the bitter laugh of someone who was used to life playing cruel jokes on her. "This has to be a mistake," she said, pushing through the crowd to get to her apartment. "I'm nobody. I fix pipes and clean machines. Kings don't marry people like me." But the reporters wouldn't leave her alone. They followed her to work, to the grocery store, even to her children's school. They asked her neighbors about her life, dug up old photos, and analyzed everything she had ever done in public. Meanwhile, David was fighting his own battles. His superiors demanded explanations. Earth's president called an emergency meeting. Military leaders accused him of sabotaging humanity's future. Everyone wanted to know why he had chosen a maintenance worker over a princess, a scientist, or a diplomat. David finally agreed to explain his reasoning at a press conference. Standing at the podium with cameras from across the galaxy watching, he took a deep breath and began to speak. "I know you all think I've made a terrible mistake," he said. "You're wondering why I chose Rosa Martinez instead of someone more obvious. But I didn't choose randomly. I spent weeks studying Zephyrian culture, trying to understand what they truly value." He clicked a button, and images appeared on the screen behind him. Pictures of Zephyrian heroes and legends, all ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. "The Zephyrians don't worship beauty or fame," David continued. "They honor courage, sacrifice, and genuine kindness. In their culture, scars aren't flaws to be hidden. They're proof that someone has worked hard and faced challenges. Gray hair isn't a sign of age. It's evidence of wisdom earned through experience." The room was completely quiet now. Even the reporters had stopped taking notes to listen. Rosa Martinez embodies everything the Zephyrians respect, David said. "She has spent her life helping others, even when it cost her personally. She has faced tragedy and kept going. She has raised children to be good people while working jobs that would break most of us. By Zephyrian standards, she isn't the ugliest woman in the galaxy. She's one of the most beautiful." As David spoke, something amazing was happening across Earth's networks. People began sharing stories about Rosa that the media had missed. Her coworkers talked about how she always stayed late to help others learn new skills. Her neighbors described how she organized community cleanup days and helped elderly residents with their shopping. Her children's teachers spoke about how polite and hardworking Miguel and Ana were, clearly raised with love and strong values. But the most important reaction came from an unexpected source. King Aethelzil himself requested a private communication with Rosa, bypassing all the diplomatic channels and speaking directly to her through a secure connection that Earth's government couldn't monitor. Rosa was terrified during that first conversation, sitting in a borrowed conference room and staring at the alien king's image on the screen. But as they talked, something surprising happened. The king didn't ask her about politics or science or diplomacy. Instead, he asked about her children, her work, and her dreams for the future. For the first time since this whole situation began, Rosa started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the cruel joke she had thought it was. The transport ship to Zephyr Prime was bigger than any building Rosa had ever seen. As she walked through its corridors with her two children clinging to her hands, she felt like she was living in a dream that might turn into a nightmare at any moment. Miguel and Ana had been quiet since leaving Earth, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Mom, are we really going to live on an alien planet?" Ana whispered, pressing closer to Rosa's side. "I don't know, baby," Rosa answered honestly. "We're going to see what happens." The diplomatic team that accompanied them tried their best to prepare Rosa for royal life. They brought her books about Zephyrian customs, taught her basic phrases in their language, and even provided what they called appropriate clothing for a future queen. But Rosa felt like they were trying to turn her into someone she WASN single quotes T. Dr. Peterson, the team's cultural expert, seemed particularly frustrated with Rosa's resistance to their lessons. "You need to understand, Rosa," she said during one of their daily sessions. "This isn't just about you anymore. You represent all of humanity. The way you behave will affect how the Zephyrians see our entire species." Rosa looked down at her hands, still rough and scarred despite the fancy creams they had given her. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm not the right person for this job." But everything changed during her third week on the ship, when King Aethelzil began their daily conversations. Unlike the diplomats who talked at her about protocol and proper behavior, the king simply talked with her about life. "Tell me about your work," he said during one of their calls, his four blue eyes focused intently on the screen. Rosa shrugged. "It's not very interesting. I fix things that are broken. Water systems, air recyclers, waste processors, the important stuff that keeps everyone alive." but nobody thinks about until it stops working. To her surprise, the king leaned forward with genuine interest. In our culture, those who maintain the systems that support life are considered among the most honored citizens. Without people like you, all the politicians and generals would be helpless. This was the first time anyone had talked about Rose's work like it mattered. She found herself telling the king about the satisfaction she felt when she solved a difficult repair, about the pride she took in keeping essential systems running smoothly. Your hands, the king said, noticing how Rosa unconsciously tried to hide them. May I see them? Embarrassed, Rosa held up her calloused, scarred hands to the camera. She expected him to look away in disgust, but instead his expression grew thoughtful. Beautiful. He said softly, each mark tells a story of service to others. In my culture, we believe that hands like yours are blessed by the gods. They show that their owner has spent their life creating and fixing rather than destroying. Rosa stared at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. These hands that she had always been ashamed of. That made her avoid shaking hands with important people. That reminded her daily of her low status. The alien king called them beautiful. During another conversation, King Aethazel asked about her children. Rosa's face lit up as she talked about Miguel's love for mathematics and Anna's talent for drawing. She showed him pictures they had made for her, stories they had written, report cards that proved how hard they worked in school. They are your greatest achievement, the king said after listening to her talk about them for nearly an hour. Anyone can conquer planets or accumulate wealth, but raising good children who will make the world better, this is the most important work in the universe. Rosa felt tears in her eyes. Since her husband's death, she had worried constantly that she wasn't enough for her children, that they needed more than she could give them. But the king saw her parenting as something valuable, something worthy of respect. As the days passed, Rosa began to learn about King Aethazel's own struggles. Despite being royalty, he had faced criticism from his own people for being too thoughtful, too peaceful. Many Zephyrians believed their king should be a fierce warrior who solved problems with force. Instead, Aethazel preferred negotiation and cooperation. I am not what my people expected in a ruler, he admitted during one of their conversations. I am smaller than most Zephyrian males. I prefer books to weapons. And I believe that true strength comes from helping others rather than defeating them. Many of my subjects see these as weaknesses. Rosa found herself wanting to comfort this powerful alien king who, despite his position, felt like an outsider in his own world. Maybe being different isn't a weakness. Maybe it just means you see things that others miss. The king's four eyes seemed to brighten at her words. This is why Captain Rodriguez chose well. You understand what it means to be judged by others, to be seen as less than you are. But you also understand that true worth isn't determined by what others think. Rosa started looking forward to these daily conversations more than anything else. The king never made her feel stupid for not knowing about politics or science. Instead, he asked her opinions about fairness, about raising children, about what made life meaningful. Her answers seemed to fascinate him. One day, Anna wandered into the communication room during one of Rosa's calls with the king. She had been drawing pictures of their new life, imagining what an alien planet might look like. Is that your daughter? The king asked gently. Anna hid behind Rosa's chair, peeking out shyly at the strange figure on the screen. Anna, this is King Aethazel. Rosa said softly. He's the one we're going to visit. After a moment, Anna stepped forward and held up her drawing. It showed stick figures holding hands under a purple sky. Rosa, Miguel, Anna, and a tall blue figure that was obviously meant to be the king. I drew us being friends, Anna said in a small voice. The king was quiet for a long moment, studying the simple drawing. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Rosa had ever heard it. It is the most beautiful artwork I have ever seen, he said. May I keep a copy of it? Anna nodded enthusiastically, and Rosa felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't about politics or treaties or saving humanity anymore. This was about a lonely king and a struggling family, finding something they hadn't expected to find, genuine connection. As their ship approached Zephyr Prime, Rosa looked out at the strange, beautiful planet that was about to become her home. For the first time since this journey began, she wasn't afraid. She was curious about what came next. The king had shown her that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of. Maybe, just maybe, she was exactly who she was supposed to be. Rosa stood in front of the massive mirror in her chambers on Zephyr Prime, barely recognizing herself. The traditional Zephyrian wedding robes were unlike anything she had ever imagined. Flowing fabric that seemed to change color as she moved, embedded with tiny crystals that caught the light from the planet's twin suns. But what surprised her most was how confident she felt wearing them. The past week on Zephyr Prime had been overwhelming. The planet itself was breathtaking, with crystal spires reaching toward purple skies and floating gardens that defied everything Rosa thought she knew about physics. The Zephyrian people were equally amazing, tall, graceful beings who moved like dancers and spoke in musical tones. Miguel and Anna had adapted faster than Rosa expected. They spent their days exploring the palace with young Zephyrian guides, learning about alien technology and making friends despite the language barrier. Children, it seemed, could connect across any species divide. "Mom, you look like a real princess," Anna said, tugging on Rosa's robes. Her daughter wore a smaller version of the ceremonial dress, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. Miguel, now 8 and trying to be grown up about everything, nodded seriously. "Dad would be proud of you." "Mom," Rosa felt her throat tighten. She had been so focused on everything else that she hadn't had time to properly grieve leaving Earth, leaving the life she had built with her late husband. But maybe this wasn't about leaving the past behind. Maybe it was about building something new while honoring what came before. A gentle chime announced the arrival of King Aethel's personal advisor, elderly Zephyrian named Keeper Velter. Over the past week, Velter had become Rosa's guide to understanding her new world. "It is time." "Rosa Martinez," Velter said, using the formal tone reserved for important occasions. "The king awaits you in the Crystal Hall." Rosa's stomach fluttered with nerves, but she took her children's hands and walked toward her future. The Crystal Hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Rosa saw humans from Earth's diplomatic corps, Zephyrians in their finest ceremonial robes, and representatives from dozens of other species that had come to witness this historic moment. As she walked down the aisle, she heard whispers in languages she didn't understand. But somehow she knew they weren't mocking her anymore. King Aethel's stood at the altar, and for the first time, Rosa saw him not as an alien king, but as someone who had become genuinely important to her. He was nervous too. She could tell by the way his eyes kept shifting between her face. And the crowd. The ceremony itself was beautiful and strange. Zephyrian weddings involved the sharing of light, literally passing glowing crystals back and forth while speaking vows. Rosa had practiced the words, but when the moment came, she found herself saying something different. "I don't know if I'll be a good queen," she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "I don't know all your customs or speak your language perfectly, but I promise to learn. I promise to care about your people the way I care about my own children, and I promise to stand beside you, not because it's my duty, but because I choose to." King Aethel's response surprised everyone, including Rosa. Instead of the traditional Zephyrian wedding vows, he spoke in simple words that everyone could understand. "Rosa Martinez, you have shown me that true beauty comes from a kind heart and a willingness to help others. You have taught me that strength isn't about power, but about doing what's right even when it's difficult. I don't ask you to change who you are. I ask you to remain exactly who you are, because that person is exactly who our people need." But the king wasn't finished. As the crowd watched in amazement, he stepped forward and made an announcement that would change everything. "My friends from across the galaxy," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "This wedding represents more than the union of two people. It represents a test that humanity has passed with extraordinary grace." Rosa felt confused. "What test?" "When I offered Captain Rodriguez the choice of any woman in the galaxy, I was not seeking beauty or fame or political advantage. I was watching to see what humanity truly valued. Many species, when given such an offer, would have chosen based on appearance or status, but humanity chose based on character. The crowd murmured with surprise and interest. Rosa Martinez was selected not despite her humble background, but because of it. She represents the very best of what any species can offer: compassion, dedication, sacrifice for others, and the strength to keep going when life becomes difficult. By choosing her, humanity proved that they understand what truly matters. King Aethelzil gestured to his advisors, who brought forward a series of documents. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that our alliance will extend far beyond a simple peace treaty. Earth will receive full access to Zephyrian technology, including medical advances that will save millions of lives. We will establish joint research stations and trading posts. Most importantly, we will create exchange programs so that our young people can learn from each other. Rosa felt dizzy. This was so much more than anyone had expected. Furthermore, the king continued, I hereby declare that Miguel and Ana Martinez will be considered royal heirs of Zephyr Prime, with all the rights and protections that status provides. They will have the best education we can offer, while maintaining their connection to their human heritage. Rosa looked down at her children, who were staring up at the king with wide eyes. Miguel whispered, Does this mean we're princes and princess now? Before Rosa could answer, King Aethelzil knelt down to their level, something that made the entire Zephyrian audience gasp, as their king had never knelt before anyone. It means you are part of our family now, he said gently, and families take care of each other. As the ceremony concluded and the celebration began, Rosa found herself surrounded by beings from across the galaxy who wanted to meet her, to understand how maintenance worker had become the catalyst for the most important alliance in recent history. But what struck her most was how natural it all felt. She wasn't pretending to be someone else anymore. She was still Rosa Martinez, still a mother who worried about her children, still someone who believed in fixing things that were broken. The only difference was that now, instead of fixing water pipes and air recyclers, she was helping to repair the relationships between entire civilizations. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around them, King Aethelzil found Rosa standing on a balcony looking up at Earth's distant star. Do you regret leaving your old life behind? He asked softly. Rosa thought about it for a moment. I'm not leaving it behind, she said finally. I'm taking the best parts of it with me and using them to build something new. The king smiled, an expression that was becoming more human-like the more time he spent with Rosa's family. That, he said, is exactly what I hoped you would say. 5 years had passed since Rosa Martinez became Queen of Zephyr Prime, and the changes were extraordinary. Standing in the council chamber of the Galactic Alliance, Rosa addressed representatives from 47 different star systems. Her voice was steady and confident now, though she still carried herself with the same humble grace that had first caught King Aethelzil's attention. The refugee crisis on Kepler 442b requires immediate action, Rosa said, gesturing to the holographic display showing overcrowded camps. We have the resources and the technology to help these families. The question isn't whether we can afford to help them. The question is whether we can afford not to. Miguel, now 13, sat in the observer section with his sister Ana, who was 11. Both children had grown up in the palace, but had never forgotten their roots. Miguel was studying advanced engineering, inspired by his mother's work with infrastructure systems. Ana had discovered a talent for languages and could now speak fluently with beings from dozens of different worlds. The years had been kind to Rosa in ways that surprised everyone, including herself. She hadn't become more traditionally beautiful. Her hands were still marked by years of hard work, and her hair was now more silver than black. But something about her had changed. She carried herself like someone who knew her own worth, and that confidence made her radiant. The Galactic Refugee Council that Rosa had established was now the most respected humanitarian organization in known space. What had started as a simple desire to help displaced families had grown into a massive network that provided housing, education, and job training across multiple star systems. King Aethelzil watched his wife address the council with obvious pride. The shy, uncertain woman who had arrived on Zephyr Prime 5 years ago had grown into one of the most influential leaders in the galaxy. But more importantly to him, she had remained fundamentally the same person, kind, practical, and always focused on helping others. After the session ended, Rosa walked through the corridors of the Alliance headquarters, stopping to chat with maintenance workers, security guards, and office cleaners. This had become her habit wherever she went. She remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to do important work that nobody noticed. And she made sure that never happened around her. Your Majesty, called a young human intern named Tommy, who worked in the communications department. I wanted to thank you for the scholarship program. My little sister just got accepted to the Zephyrian Academy of Sciences. Because of the opportunities you created. Rosa smiled warmly. Tell your sister that hard work matters more than where you come from. If she keeps studying and stays curious about the world, she'll do amazing things. These interactions happen everywhere Rosa went. The scholarship programs, job training centers, and cultural exchange initiatives she had championed had touched millions of lives across the galaxy. Children from poor families now had chances their parents could never have imagined. Later that evening, Rosa found herself in the palace garden with Captain David Rodriguez, who had become a close family friend over the years. David now served as Earth's permanent ambassador to the Galactic Alliance, and he often visited Zephyr Prime. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had chosen someone else? David asked, watching Miguel and Anna play with a group of young Zephyrians. In the garden. Rosa considered the question. Sometimes, but I think you chose the right person, not because I was special, but because I was ordinary. People across the galaxy could relate to someone who understood struggle, who had to work for everything she had. The intelligence reports from other worlds are fascinating, David said. Apparently, several alien civilizations were watching our selection process carefully. When we chose character over appearance, over fame, or political connections, it changed how they saw humanity. We started getting invitations to join trade agreements and scientific collaborations that had been closed to us before. Rosa nodded. She had heard similar stories from diplomatic contacts across the galaxy. Earth's reputation had been transformed, not by military might or technological advancement, but by a single decision that showed what humans truly valued. Mom, Anna called from across the garden. Come see what we built. Rosa walked over to find that the children had constructed an elaborate model city, using blocks and crystals, complete with tiny homes, schools, and parks. It's a refugee settlement, Miguel explained proudly, but not like the camps on the news. This one has everything families need to build new lives. Anna pointed to different sections of their creation. See, houses for everyone, schools for the kids, workshops where adults can learn new jobs, and parks where people can relax and make friends. Rosa felt her heart swell with pride. Her children had grown up seeing her work to help displaced families, and they had internalized the lesson that everyone deserved dignity and opportunity. That night, Rosa addressed a gathering of young people from across the galaxy via holographic broadcast. It had become an annual tradition, and millions of teenagers and young adults tuned in to hear her speak. When I was your age, Rosa began, I thought I knew exactly what my life would be like. I would work hard, raise my children, and try to make my small corner of the world a little better. I never imagined I would travel to other planets or address galactic councils. She paused, looking directly into the camera. But here's what I want you to understand. My life changed not because I became someone different, but because I had the courage to remain who I was, even when others thought that wasn't good enough. Rosa gestured to a photo behind her showing her younger self in her maintenance uniform, standing next to a photo of her current self in royal robes. They used to call me the ugliest woman in the galaxy, she said with a gentle smile. And you know what? Maybe by some standards, I was. But what those people didn't understand is that real beauty isn't about being perfect on the outside. It's about what you choose to do with your life, how you treat other people, and whether you make the world better or worse by being in it. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages poured in from young people across dozens of worlds, sharing their own stories of feeling different, of being overlooked, of struggling to fit in. A teenage girl from the outer colonies wrote, "Queen Rosa, I always felt bad about my appearance until I heard your story. Now I focus on being kind to others and working hard in school. Thank you for showing me that what's inside matters most." A young man from Earth's industrial sector said, "My dad works in maintenance like you used to. He always felt ashamed of his job until you became famous. Now he tells everyone he's proud to keep important systems running." King Aethelzil found Rosa later that evening, reading messages from young people and wiping tears from her eyes. "Happy tears?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Very happy tears," Rosa confirmed. "Do you know what the most amazing part of all this is? Tell me. 5 years ago, I thought my life was small and unimportant. I thought I didn't matter in the big picture. But now I realize that everyone's life matters. Every person who chooses kindness over cruelty, who works hard even when nobody's watching, who helps their neighbors, they're all changing the galaxy in their own way." Rosa looked out at the stars visible through their window, each one representing countless worlds with countless people living their own stories. "I wasn't chosen because I was special," she said softly. "I was chosen because I was ordinary." And that taught the whole galaxy that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they have the chance. King Aethelzil took her scarred, work-worn hand in his larger one. "My dear Rosa, there was never anything ordinary about a heart as generous as yours." As Rosa fell asleep that night, she thought about the maintenance worker she had been 5 years ago, struggling to pay bills and wondering if her life had any greater purpose. That woman could never have imagined the path that lay ahead. But she had possessed everything needed for the journey: compassion, determination, and the simple belief that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity. The galaxy was a kinder place because an ordinary woman had been given an extraordinary opportunity and had chosen to use it, not for personal glory, but to lift up others who were struggling just as she once had. Sometimes the most beautiful thing about a person isn't what you see when you first meet them. Sometimes it's what you discover when you take the time to really look.